welcome to CounterPunch Radio. My name is Eric Draitzer. Thanks so much for tuning in and coming back to the show. First-time listeners finding the show, welcome aboard. Always happy to have you. Hey, have you gone over to CounterPunch Plus? Get that subscription, support CounterPunch. We've been around for 30 years or so. We'll be around for at least another 130, maybe 330 more years and become the longest standing periodical in the history of the printed word. Who knows? Go over to CounterPunch, get a subscription, help us keep the lights on. We have a fund drive going on right now. What a great time to show your support for CounterPunch, to keep this great content coming. Go over to the website, do what you got to do, make it happen. And speaking of people who make it happen for CounterPunch, we have ourselves a glorious special visitor with us today. It is the editor of CounterPunch, Johsua Frank. Josh is here to talk about his brand new book, Atomic Days, the Untold Story of the Most Toxic Place in America. Josh is a great guy. Josh is my pal. He's your pal, too. Hi, Josh.
Hey, Eric. How's it going, man?
Doing well. How are you?
Doing all right. And just a little quick edit. I'm only one of the editors of CounterPunch, so people don't think I'm the only one running the show. That's generous of you.
Jefferson Sinclair? Jefferson Sinclair? Never heard of him.
Yeah, no one's heard of Jeff or Nath St. Clair either. So
never heard of them. Who the hell are they?
Yeah, exactly.
All right, Josh, talk to me a little bit about this book. Talk to me about Hanford. Actually, before you talk to me about that, talk to me about what it is. What is Hanford? Where is it located? Why is it important? And obviously, why'd you write a book about it?
Yeah, well, Hanford was the site that was chosen during the Manhattan Project to be an outpost for the nuclear weapons industry. Basically, it was chosen because of its remoteness. It's located in eastern Washington state. It's along the Columbia River. And so it's sort of out of sight, out of mind for a lot of people. And it had access to water. The climate was nice. And so they decided to seize this land. They stole the land, of course, from indigenous communities that were there, also some farming communities that they moved off the land. And they built this gigantic facility that produced plutonium that went into the bomb that was dropped on Nagasaki, the Fat Man bomb. And then during the Cold War, Hanford was the go-to site for plutonium that was used essentially in the entire arsenal, or the majority of the nuclear weapons that in the United States. So that's what it was at that time. But now it is the largest environmental cleanup in the world. It's the costliest environmental cleanup in the history of the world. And it's probably the most toxic site in the world, absolutely in the Western Hemisphere. No, I don't think there's any comparison. And it's a boondoggle. It's a taxpayer boondoggle. A lot of people don't know about it. They don't know about the devastation of what was left behind because of that plutonium production. And they do not know the risk that it still poses to this day to the environment. And also, they just don't understand anything about what it's doing to their pocketbooks and how much money is going into this thing. So, yeah, I wanted to shine a little light on that. I wanted to kind of expose the history of it from sort of the grassroots perspective, and then also just fast forwarding all the way to today of what we're dealing with, and so that can be a little bit more accountability, hopefully, and give voice to some of the people there that are working on a lot of important stuff. So I think it's a really important subject, and hopefully this book adds to the conversation a little bit.
Well, you and I have been having a conversation about a lot of these issues going back quite a while, well before you had the book completed. And I want to ask you a little bit about one of the things that you've mentioned to me just in our own conversations, and I know you've brought it up with other people, talking about the connection between Hanford and what we might call the permanent U.S. war economy. Can you explain how Hanford really represents something of the military-industrial complex and the nature of the U.S. war economy?
Sure. Well, I think in Hanford's context, it's important to understand that without Hanford, the town of Richland would never have existed. Richland is just a stone's throw from Hanford. It's where all of the scientists and engineers lived during the Cold War. and essentially it was created because of the Hanford complex. And to today, it is home to where all of the contractors live and that work on the cleanup. And none of that would exist without government contracts. None of that would exist without Hanford. So in that regard, it's completely a creation of the military-industrial complex. Hanford, of course, was in the bomb making business, and now it's in cleanup business, and it's all a result of the weapons proliferation from the United States. So I think in that context, it's really important to understand that without government funding, it wouldn't exist. And then, of course, because it is a nuclear site, was a nuclear site, and is a nuclear cleanup site, it is highly secret. There are a lot of people that live in around that area that have no idea what's going on there. And that's that's by design. The Department of Energy is in charge of the cleanup, but really the cleanup is carried out by contractors that are really not very accountable. Bechtel is the big contractor at Hanford, and Bechtel has a real shoddy track record. And of course, they have profited enormously from the U.S. government, military ventures and otherwise all over the planet. Of course, we can talk about what the contracts that they got in Iraq that they never fulfilled. So it's part and parcel for the pay to play politics of this government, and Hanford is a gleaming example of that. I mean, the project itself right now, the estimates for the cleanup, which really have no end date, is listed at $677 billion. It's just totally astronomical, the amount of money that's being poured into this project. Just about 5 years ago, it was only half that much. So the costs keep going up, and the waste continues to sit where it's always been. And there are right now, the biggest problem is there's 177 tanks that hold 56 million gallons of radioactive waste. That's literally bubbling. These tanks, in most regards, were not meant to last more than 20 years. They're going on 80 years. So, it's a big problem. And again, yeah, it's a lot of money that's being poured into this, trying to figure out what to do with all that waste. And not much has happened in the past 30 years since it became a cleanup.
So yeah, I mean, I'm thinking about it. Correct me if I'm wrong, Josh. I think it was 1987 was the end of production at Hanford, so it's like
Yeah.
35 years or so. So now, how is it that for 30 years the price tag is what it is, and then in the last 5 all of a sudden it jumps astronomically? What accounts for that?
Well, I think what accounts for that is that as they figure out at the beginning of the process, they really just had to figure out, well, okay, what do we need to do here? I mean, and actually, like, what's left? What's the mess that's left? And a lot of they didn't even actually know everything that was there. Like the whole site itself is a toxic waste dump. Um, so that the first order of business was just figuring out what kind of problem they're dealing with, and the second order of business is figuring out what to do with all of this waste. And they've had different ideas over the years of what to do with the waste. There's a process called vitrification, which is essentially to turn this waste into glass, and then they're going to go and store it. And that seems to be the best method. That's the method that they've been pursuing. The waste treatment plant, which is the plant that's going to be utilized to vitrify this material, is in the process of being built. And that has been cost overruns, cost delays, technical problems, a lot of research going into the design of that. And as we've seen, the costs have been going up and up and up as it gets more and more complicated. And so that's where we're at right now. And that's why that price tag is sitting there. And I mean, that's not even accounting for the inflation of the last 2 years. So I can't even imagine what the next government accountability report's going to come out with is a number for what it's going to cost to remediate this site. And I think it's important to understand too that it's nuclear waste. So remediation is really just like keeping it safe. It's not necessarily ridding it of this toxic material. The toxic material hopefully will be housed in a safer facility, and not be leaking into the groundwater all around, or potentially leading to a hydrogen buildup that would become an atomic explosion, which is of real likelihood. as I write about in the book, a DOE scientist went on record talking about the possibility of this happening, and he's very concerned about it. Um, and what that would do to the local economy of the Northwest, what that would do for the entire country. There's cities like Boise and other ones would literally become uninhabitable. Radiation would be everywhere, and then, of course, what it would do to farmland and other things. And I'm sure that there's no doubt that the radioactive smoke and debris would spread across the country, um, all the way to the East Coast and beyond. It would be unlike anything the U.S. has ever experienced. So there's a very scary and real possibility. So it is important that we get this waste in a form that isn't going to pose those same risks. But of course, with all nuclear waste, the risks really never completely go away.
Talk to me a little bit about oversight and control of Hanford. Who's in charge of it? What about the politics around it? Local politicians? Is this even an issue locally? Is it not even discussed? What is the political context within which Hanford is situated?
Well, the Department of Energy is in control of the cleanup, technically. As a lot of uh, scientists and engineers have told me, both those that have worked as the contractor side and those that have worked for the Department of Energy, they really believe that the Department of Energy is completely understaffed on the Hanford project, that most of the technical staff is on the private side. So really, Bechtel and the other contractors run the show at Hanford, and the DOE is kind of always playing catch up, and that creates a real problem because without the DOE having the right and proper staff, it's hard to hold the contractors accountable, right? Because the contractors are the ones that kind of run things. Uh, Richland itself is a government town, but it's really a contractor town that's exists because of government contracts. So the town itself, it's a very conservative town. There's more PhDs per capita in Richland than anywhere in the entire country. It's a highly educated town, bunch of scientists, bunch of engineers. And so I think the environment is very insular. I think that it's a very conservative, rural community, a little different than other rural communities of the West because of its, education. But it is still, I would say it's a culture that still looks at the atomic history of this country in a positive light. I think that they really still look at the scientific and engineering ingenuity that went into the making of this bomb, and they cherish that, and they celebrate that. So that it's an interesting kind of experience to go and